Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This will be discussing the 1992 crime, thriller, action, something, Reservoir Dogs, starring Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Quentin Tarantino, Steve Buscemi, Michael Madsen, the list goes on and on. For those of you joining us for the first time, we do all sorts of wacky stuff on the B Movie Club, homie. Okay? Each week, I post online what movie we'll be doing, and you can watch it streaming live on Netflix, or you can dig it out of your movie trunk or whatever, and we'll talk about it on the show. You can send me in your questions, comments, favorite scenes, favorite quotes. You can reach me through our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club. Don't forget to click the like button. Also, we're on, obviously, YouTube. Go to our YouTube page at KD9575 and subscribe. It's totally free. You can reach me directly on Twitter at KD9575. My initials and my birthday. Okay? Reservoir Dogs in this movie. It's essentially a heist movie. Basically what's going on is a team of thieves or robbers were brought together by a man named Joe Cabot, who's kind of like this underworld figure, kind of a mobster type, to essentially go in and rob a jewelry store and get the diamonds. And he pulls these guys from all over the country who he knows, but who don't know each other. And they each have code names based on colors. There's Mr. Orange, Mr. Blonde, Mr. White, Mr. Pink, so on and so forth. And the reason why they use code names is so each person won't know each other, and if one person gets picked up, you can't really identify who the other people are involved in the crime. There you go. But for some reason, they all know Joe Cabot's real name, his son, nice guy Eddie Cabot. They know their names, but there's never any concern about that. About halfway through the movie, we learn that one of the guys in on the crime is actually an undercover police officer. If you haven't seen the movie yet, plug your ears. The actor, or the character's name is, spoiler alert, Mr. Orange. Okay? He's secretly an undercover police officer. Again, we don't learn that until halfway through the movie. The movie is shot in kind of interesting, non-chronological order. So a lot of flash forwards, flashbacks. You meet some of the characters kind of behind the scenes. You learn about them as people, kind of their ethic in terms of being thieves and things like that. Interesting thing about this movie is at no time do you ever actually see the heist, which goes horribly wrong. There's cops all over the place. There's a lot of shooting, but it all happens off camera. Okay, I don't want to spoil everything. Okay. If you haven't seen it, of course I already told you who the undercover police officer is, so I probably spoiled everything. So anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think. Initially, the reason why it was shot non-chronologically, that was Tarantino's kind of thing. He was taking a lot of chances. One of the first movies, actually the first movie he ever directed. It's widely considered the most successful, most popular independent film of all time. He did his non-chronological order of the script, but he also did a lot of shots where it was like you see the actors at the end of a long hallway having a conversation. There weren't a lot of close-ups. Another thing, the fact that they didn't show the heist, that was kind of a new thing for Tarantino as well. Originally, they weren't going to do that just for budgetary reasons. But later, he just liked the idea so much that they just kept it, even when their budget grew. Originally, it was just going to be a movie starring Tarantino and some of his buddies. And it was going to have a budget of like $90,000, which seems like a lot for most people in the world. But obviously, for making a movie, it's nothing. Somehow, Harvey Keitel, who plays Mr. White in this movie, he read the script, liked it so much, he came in and said, hey, I'll play Mr. White and I'll help you get greater financing. And he actually did. They wound up pulling together $1.2 million to make this movie. Still not a huge amount, but enough to get it done. Tarantino had sold some scripts earlier, which is also where initial money was coming from. Tony Scott, the famous director who's recently not with us anymore, he actually went to Tarantino, and Tarantino said, here are my two scripts, Reservoir Dogs and True Romance, which is another great movie. And Tony Scott was like, I'd rather direct Reservoir Dogs. And Tarantino said, no, you can do True Romance. I'm doing Reservoir Dogs. So there you go. Tarantino originally envisioned himself playing the role of Mr. Pink, which is one of basically the four main characters of Reservoir Dogs. But interestingly enough, the only one of those guys who doesn't have like this backstory that you learn a lot about. So when Steve Buscemi, who was not a big star at this point, came in and read for it, Tarantino told him, he's like, this was going to be my role, so if you want it, you better knock my socks off. And he did. And again, if you know Steve Buscemi, he's kind of like this Weasley-looking guy. But he took the role. He made it great. No question. A lot of actors wanted roles in this. David Duchovny auditioned for it. George Clooney auditioned for it. Samuel L. Jackson auditioned for it. They actually offered a role to Christopher Walken. He turned it down. They actually made 5 different cash offers to James Woods' agent, and the agent turned them down because the money wasn't enough as far as he was concerned. When James Woods found out about it later, he actually fired his agent. He was so irritated that he didn't get an opportunity to be in this movie. So there you go. What else can I tell you about this movie? If you've seen this movie, or frankly any Tarantino movie, you know there's a lot of coarse language, if you will. This one actually drops the F-bomb 242 times. I don't know if that's a record, but it seems a little excessive, if you ask me. Also, and kind of a Tarantino staple, it is pretty violent. There's one scene in particular that is pretty rough. If you haven't seen it, just get ready. If you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it. And they actually had a paramedic standing by because they wanted like realism, because there's some gunshot wounds, people bleeding. They wanted realism in those scenes. At one point in that scene, the police officer who was tied to the chair says, I have a new baby daughter, or something to that effect, which was a total ad-lib. And the scene was so rough, Michael Madsen, who plays like the villain in that scene, he almost couldn't continue because he had just had children in his real life, and that the officer ad-libbing that really affected him. So there you go. He's like a method type actor, if you know what I mean. And when they were shooting it, and they had like, obviously their investors were kind of like, hey, we want to see the dailies, The producer, Lawrence Bender, showed them more tamer scenes, the scenes that are kind of standard crime scenes versus those scenes that are a little bit rougher, if you will. For just that reason, they didn't want to scare off their investors. So there you go. As I said, there's a lot of violence and blood in this movie. Tim Roth, who plays the undercover police officer, Mr. Orange, who's a British actor, and you've seen him in Pulp Fiction and things like that. At one point, he's lying in a pool of not of his own blood, but of his character's blood. I'm assuming they used corn syrup. I mean, he may be a method actor, but hopefully it's not his own blood. And it hardened. It essentially coagulated to such a degree that when he was done shooting, they had to basically rip him off the ground because he got glued to the ground. So there you go. This movie is actually more popular in England than Pulp Fiction. And when Reservoir Dogs came out in the United States, Tarantino was still basically an unknown. But in England, he was like a huge celebrity. Obviously, his work went on to inspire such British filmmakers like Guy Ritchie, who did Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and things like that. The movie had such a low budget that most of the actors wore like their own clothes. Harvey Keitel's suit is his own suit. Steve Buscemi is actually wearing his own black jeans instead of dress pants. They had a bit of a budgetary issue, so there you have that. This movie makes a lot of references to characters you meet in other movies. Michael Madsen's character, Vic Vega, is supposed to be Vincent Vega They're supposed to be brothers. Vincent Vega was, of course, John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. They make references to Alabama. Alabama was a character played by Patricia Arquette in True Romance. There's kind of this whole one universe kind of thing. I have a love-hate relationship with Tarantino. I think his dialogue is dynamite. He was one of those first directors who had scenes where people are talking about things that really don't propel the plot in any way. It's just people talking about whatever. And those scenes are always great. Such as, you remember in Pulp Fiction, where they're talking about the Royale with cheese and things like that, where it's just kind of a realistic, people talking about whatever, you know. Whereas prior to this, people, if they spoke, it was, I'm propelling the plot in some way. I'm giving you information you need to know for the next scene or a scene that comes later. So that is very novel. Tarantino, people have accused him of kind of ripping off older movies. He does not rip off. These are called homages to previous movies. An example of that in this is, like I said, the characters all having code names based on colors. That first appeared in the movie Taking of Pelham 123 with Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw. So there you go. If you've not seen this movie, I highly recommend it. If you like Pulp Fiction, if you like Tarantino-type movies, check it out. It does have those violent scenes. And I've often said Tarantino is great, but there's usually one scene that makes me like the movie about 5% less, just in terms of its graphic nature, if you will. Dialogue's great. Acting's always great, unless Tarantino has too big of a role. My opinion. Okay. So it is streaming instantly on Netflix. It currently holds a 96% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, so you know it's good. Check it out. Watch it. Don't sit down with your kids before Sunday dinner and watch it. Just my opinion. Okay. So check it out. Next week, we're going to go back to the horror genre, to the 1983 horror classic, Silver Bullet, based upon the Stephen King novella, Cycle of the Werewolf, starring this murderer's row of talent, Gary Busey and Corey Haim. You can't go wrong with that. It is streaming instantly on Netflix, so check it out. Let me know what you think. Send me any favorite scenes, favorite quotes. Favorite scenes, favorite quotes. I don't know why I said that twice. Anything else you want to get off your chest? Spread the word. Of course, you can follow me on Facebook, Original B Movie Club, YouTube, KD9575, and Twitter, also at KD9575. Tell all your friends what we're doing down here. The more, the merrier. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote. And here it is. Like a Virgin is not about a sensitive girl who meets a nice fella. That's True Blue, okay? No argument about that.